It's a Tuesday on the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app, streaming live on YouTube, and we plan to stay there. Hopefully no internet outages today at the Team 980, or in like literally at the Team 980. We're streaming at the Team 980, but also like at the Team 980 in this building. I would like no internet outages today. That'd be cool. That'd be cool. Anthony, a couple of news items to start the show. On the keep an eye on it department, local in-house for the Commanders. Oh wait, hold on. Sorry. Let's. Apparently, Russell said that we do a more mature radio show. I don't know what part of the show he listens to.
Yeah, I don't know either.
There's a lot of ways I would differentiate our show and his show. I don't know that maturity is one of them. Anyway.
Breaking news. Oh, snap. News is broken. Breaking news.
Obviously. The Commanders have signed a corner to the practice squad. So this is the keep an eye on it department. Kevon Seymour is a former 6th-round pick by the Bills back in 2016. I'm just reading this data from the Commanders website. This is not me being smart and having a file on him. This is just the reality of the information that is in front of me. I currently am Ron Burgundy. Seymour, a 6th-round pick by the Bills out of USC in 2016, has appeared in 64 games with 7 starts. He last played for the Ravens, where he recorded 31 tackles, a sack, and a pass breakup. I don't know when that was. For his career, which also includes stints with the Panthers and Eagles, Seymour has 83 stops, 8 pass breakups, a forced fumble, and 2 fumble recoveries. He had 126 tackles in 4 seasons with the Trojans to go with 3 interceptions and 24 starts. So that's who the Commanders have signed to their practice squad. Of course, who knows if he will be active on Sunday. It's just kind of a tryout situation. You can kind of get away with signing guys to the practice squad right now because that is that's how the roster rules work. He's 30 years old, born in Pasadena, California. Last played, he did at least the 8 games that he played last year, last place he was in Baltimore, and he was actually there for 3 seasons. Played in 8 games. Again, forced a fumble, had a couple of tackles. So there's that. The other piece of breaking news.
Breaking news. Oh, snap. News is broken. Breaking news.
Non-local department. The Miami Dolphins, per Tua Tagovailoa, per Mike Garafolo and Ian Rappaport, are placing Tua Tagovailoa on IR in order to give him ample time to progress through the stages of a concussion protocol and meet with outside neurologists. The Dolphins' next 4 games will all have, presumably, Skylar Thompson set to take over at quarterback. They're at Seattle versus the Titans, at the Patriots. They have a bye, and then they're at the Colts. I did see an interesting thought. I'm trying to remember who had it. It was one of the like NFL writer types. So I apologize to that person because this is not my original thought, but I did think it was a good one, and now I'm going to share it. And I can't give credit to whoever credit is due. But Anthony, somebody said that the Dolphins should trade for Bryce Young. What's the downside? Whatever draft capital you pick up?
Do they have the capital for it?
That's a good question. Dolphins 2020, where are we at? 2025 draft picks? Oh my God. What year in the future are we? The Dolphins have their own 1st, 2nd, and 5th round. Oh, that was 2024. 2025. Here we go. They have their own 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th. 5th, they have from the Dolphins, their own 5th. They don't have a 6th. They have the Bears 7th and their own 7th.
Could they take on the salary as well, though?
That's a good question, actually, because it is a fully guaranteed contract. Anthony, you're asking the non-fun questions.
I'm just saying. I mean, if we're going to say, can they, should they trade for him? Is it a likely thing to do? Like, they've invested so much money, like in the offensive line, the receivers they just paid, Jalen Ramsey's contract. He's also set the. No, he just got paid again, right?
He did just get paid.
Yeah, so he just got paid. So I'm just saying. I'm just saying. But I would definitely love for Bryce Young to get out of Carolina. He needs new scenery. He needs a coach like a Mike McDaniel to,
He sure does. And
help him.
And if you want like the tweet that I saw was basically that's the only offense that he could operate. That with what Bryce Young has been turned into, like the height, the gun shyness, like just get him something that is get the ball out of your hands quickly to guys that are open and like college open because Tyreek is that good and Jalen Waddle is that fast. He would have played with, or no, sorry. Did he play with Waddle when Waddle was a freshman? I don't think so. I think
Bryce.
Waddle was already out of Alabama.
Yeah, he was gone. He was gone.
He played with Tua. But yeah, I mean, I think that the quick strike offense, the quick decision making, the ability to get the ball out of someone's hands, like reliance on the running game, you can do some play action stuff. Like that is a much better. Like I think Tua is better than Bryce Young, obviously by a lot, but they are similar style. Like the appeal of Tua and the appeal of Bryce Young was theoretically the same. Quick decision makers, quick releases, get the ball out of their hands, super accurate, not the biggest downfield, not the greatest athletes, but enough athleticism to move around a little bit. But it really is the superpower, the thing that made them top 5 picks respectively, is the quick decision-making, getting the ball out of their hands. Bryce Young's decision-making is broken. So why would you not, if you can, like get him in there, give him a couple of weeks to see what's up, see if you can, fix him, and that becomes an insurance policy in case Tua Tagovailoa decides he never wants to play football again. And then at the very least, you have a former number 1 pick in your building, and you figure out the math. You might have to figure out the math in terms of the contracts. I'd have to take a deeper look at that, and trying to do that and host a radio show is more math and speaking at once than my brain can do. But I love that idea. Sometimes these things feel convenient and right because it's just like, oh, well, they need a place to go. Or Bryce needs a place to go. They need a quarterback in Miami. Let's just put them together. But it's like, no, from a football sense, that actually makes a ton of sense. It's a smart thing for Miami to get an insurance policy in case Tua can't play anymore or decides he doesn't want to play anymore. And for Bryce, it would be a lifeline out of hell. And hell in the NFL is currently, unfortunately, Charlotte, North Carolina. All right, that's the breaking news. Commanders sign a corner of their practice squad, Tua to IR. We will obviously, Tuesday's a big transaction day, so if anything else significant happens, whether it's IRs, whether it's people signing, whatever, we'll keep you in the loop as the show goes. But we know around these parts, Tuesdays are Vibe Check Tuesdays. So what's your vibe for the Commanders after 2 weeks? They're 1-1. I think you could be optimistic. You could be pessimistic. I think there's been a little bit of something for everyone. So what are you? 301-230-0980. 301-230-0980 is the phone number. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday. We're taking your calls for the rest of the hour here on The Hoffman Show. 301-230-0980 is our phone number. If you'd like to give us a call and get in on this Vibe Check Tuesday. How you feeling about the Commanders after their 1-1 start? That is the question. 301-230-0980 is where you answer it. You can also leave a comment in the live chat on YouTube at the Team 980. Let's get things started with Jackie, who I think also has something they want to add on the Bryce Young situation in Carolina. Jackie, real quick, let's hit your Bryce Young comment, and then we can go full bore into Vibe Check Tuesday on the Commanders front.
Hey, Craig. So my thing with Bryce Young, I feel like it's almost like the Justin Fields situation. They're not surrounding this young quarterback with anyone that can help him grow. I mean, they got rid of his best receiver. So now who is he throwing the ball to? And instead of them trying to get better pieces around him, they aren't. His offensive line is suspect. And then he's throwing to a Thielen. How old is Adam Thielen? Come on. We got to give this kid another chance somewhere else with a different coach, because I won't accept the fact that he's not good enough to be an NFL quarterback. That's my take on that.
Yeah, Jackie, I agree with you. I liked him too much coming out. Maybe I'm being stubborn about it, but I also have seen too many quarterbacks get ruined. And, if you play out his career 10 times, this is certainly, you can't get worse than this one. And you'd love to see what would have happened if he had the support from Go, or if he had just been benched from Go, like a realization by the organization to say, yeah, he's worth taking number one, but if we play him right now, we're going to ruin him. And they didn't have that humility. That's because that organization's a mess. And I think now that there's better ownership here in Washington, people realize just how much, not beyond like the owner came into the draft room and made a draft pick, how much bad ownership affects a team. And they've got it in Carolina, and it's affecting a lot of stuff. So wishing certainly the best for Bryce Young. I think Miami would be an incredible landing spot for him. Let Mike McDaniel get him, Humpty Dumpty it back in one piece, and hopefully they can put him back together again. But, Jackie, let's get going on the Vibe Check Tuesday on the Commanders front. What you got on Washington after this 1-1 start?
So I'll say this. They did play a lot better the second week. I think the defense stepped up. I think when they actually really, really needed to, they still gave up too much. But being at the game and seeing a lot of things that you don't see on TV, I mean, I know Jaden Daniels is only going to get better as he continues to play, but he also left a lot on the field. He missed a lot of wide open receivers, and I don't know if it's because he's not trusting his offensive line, or if he just feels like he has to make a play because he wants us to win, and I understand that. But I think if the kid he got to relax a little bit. I mean, I think once, like Doc and them said, the game slows down for him, I think he's going to be tremendous, and I finally think we got our franchise quarterback. Thanks for taking my call. See y'all later. Thanks, Ann, for taking me.
You got it, Jackie. Thank you. I think that's great. A great job. Jackie's got a good eye. Be able to notice all that stuff from the game. I do think it's definitely a situation where once the game slows down, you'd think that he's going to get some of this stuff better because his eyes will be in the right place. I think what's happening to Jaden Daniels in the drop-back game right now is his eyes are going real fast. And if something's not there immediately, he doesn't understand kind of the timing that you need to have the patience to sit on it just long enough. Okay, now it's not there. Now I get to my next one. My next one will still be there. I can wait. For a lot of quarterbacks, it's the other way. They wait way too long on their first guy, and I'd rather slow a guy down than have to speed him up. And so that will be something. And also, as he feels the footwork of this offense, I think it's something that those two things work together. But it's also why I think Cliff Kingsbury is getting a little bit too much flack for, take the screens out. No, that is keeping Jaden Daniels safe right now. That is keeping him in a rhythm. There is a balance, though. And I do think what happened in this game was Jaden probably had a few too many screens and RPOs and predetermined throws versus being able to get back and get into a rhythm. And as the game went on, and even after he took that hit, there was a little bit more of the drop back game. And I feel like after that point, Cliff got that balance right. Obviously, there's a lot of still to be desired. Get the big plays down the field, get the red zone stuff figured out. But I think that Jaden has shown a really high floor, which is what we expected. And then the ceiling's only going to continue to grow as the game slows down and he gets better. 301-230-0980. Billy in Miami was at the game. Billy, how was your first game back at Northwest Stadium in a while?
Oh, yeah. Well, first of all, this was meant for yesterday, but yes, I was at opening day victory day. That's what I call it, opening day victory day, Craig. And I had field passes. And by the way, I sent you the picture on the fantasy. My overall experience was amazing. Amazing. And so I have to tell you why I don't care that I'm getting my butt kicked by the Craig Hoffman Fantasy League and why I don't care that Anthony's team kicked my butt last night. I have 5 good reasons. They all have to do with the Commanders. Number 1, being at the season opener, we won against the Giants. And this is super special because I've been going for 27 years straight. My dad and I, who are Washington fans, with my uncle and cousin who are New York fans. And my dad and uncle died 2 years ago, but we have kept the tradition going. And so the second reason is because we are headed in the right direction. As a new Gold Club member, I was amazed at my experience, made possible by the new ownership. You know, they're like, oh, did you see what we did? Did you see this? I didn't have to see it. I don't know what they did. All I know was it was like night and day, the difference between last year and this year. I mean, you know, we won right when I got there. That's all I can tell you. Despite the fact that we beat the Giants, we won when I was at the game. It was so special, and you just felt special. You just felt the energy. Third reason, having field passes, and you know I was in Paris for the Olympics. I mean, it was almost up there with the Olympics for me, Craig. I hung out with Jamison Crowder. I hung out with Big Foe, Tiafo from the U.S. Open. I mean, I was right there with Brian Robinson. And by the way, you knew he was going to have a great day. I have videos of him right before the game where he was running up to the crowd and pumping his chest. I mean, it was so exciting. Number 4, while being on the field, I saw Siebert. I didn't know who he was at the time, but we counted 6 straight field goals pre-game that he made straight. And just like hitting a perfect golf shot on that 6th one, he just walked off the field. And finally, this is the 5th reason. This is more about fantasy. I'm getting destroyed in fantasy. I feel like fantasy is like Valentine's Day. It's there for the consumers, takes you away from your true love, which is the Commanders. I love the Commanders. I love what they've done. So there you go, Craig. That's my vibe.
It sounds like a pretty good vibe. Thanks, Billy, for the call. And so sorry about what's happening to your. Oh no, I'm not. I'm not sorry that. Anthony, you did that personally to Billy this week. You kicked his butt pretty good in the Hoffman Show Fantasy League.
Sadly, I did. Well, not sadly.
Yeah, sadly for him.
Everybody
But hey,
play,
look,
I'm whooping you.
Look, hey, he's happy. You're happy. Everybody's happy. We love to see it. By the way, you don't know who the top 2 scorers in the fantasy league are?
Not Craig Hoffman.
That is incorrect. I'm second behind Tony.
Ah,
I think you're like 3rd.
Really?
So the pros, if you will, are doing well.
okay.
Yeah, you're doing pretty well. Are you 2-0? You're 2-0, right?
I am indeed, sir.
Yeah, so am I.
Are you?
Yeah.
You ready to face me?
Pretty comfortable. Is that this week?
Nah, I don't think so.
No, that's probably good for you because when we go head-to-head, bad things happen for you. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday here on the Hoffman Show. Sometimes you just walk right into it. You don't even know it's coming. You should, but you don't. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday on the Hoffman Show. How you feeling about this Commanders start to the season? They are 1-1. Let's go to JT. JT, how you feeling about the Commanders after the win on Sunday?
Craig, number 1, thanks for taking the call. But the vibe, man, it's mixed.
Okay.
And I'm gonna start off on a high point. The high point for me is I finally feel like we might have found our quarterback. Like the previous caller said, I think like 2 calls ago. Yes, he's missing some things, but he's a rookie, and everything that we've learned about Jaden Daniels so far is he puts in the work. He's going to put in the time. And when that happens, that game is going to slow down. And so we look at all the things that he's already doing right now, and the game is still real fast. To me, you can only just get hyped. Now, what's kind of selling me down is the middle of our defense, specifically Payne and Allen. And I know you can correct me on this, but you got the all 22. But it just feels like they're not even present. I think I saw Payne get up in there and like one of the plays he forced somebody else to get a sack. But other than that, you don't even realize that they're even out there. And I thought they would be I knew we had some trouble on the outside, with the edges and the corners, but I didn't think in the middle, would be question marks. I thought they would really help Louvu and Wagner out, and I've been kind of disappointed. I was looking for a dominating year from both of them, and it's not to say that they can't get that. Obviously, we have a ton of games left, but just so far, they've kind of, brought my vibe down. But I know ultimately the goal is to make sure that these guys got it right at the quarterback position. And through 2 games, it looks like we have. Thanks.
Yeah, JT, great call. I think you bring up some really interesting points, and I tend to agree with all of them. We did the All-22 show this morning for Take Command, and Logan and I talked about it for quite a while on the defensive front, and I still don't know how to feel about it because there is an explanation in that this is a new defense. They are clearly learning it. Some of the bigger plays are happening in ways that are explainable, where it's like, oh, I get what they were trying to do there, but they need to realize what's happening to them and play better. So basically, like, if you're going to be really aggressive coming up the field and you feel an offensive lineman pushing you the direction you're trying to go, you need to have alarm bells that maybe I don't need to be going this direction. Like, you need to have a feel for the game. But if you're playing new techniques and there's only so many reps you've had, maybe an offense has done a good job of scouting you, like, those are tough things that have to happen. But they got to get better week over week until they're not really happening with any regularity anymore. But I think that's happened both weeks where teams have taken the aggressiveness of Allen and Payne and used it against them in ways that have created big plays and bad situations for the second, and especially a guy like Jeremy Chin at the third level of the defense, who all of a sudden is having to fill like a huge gap, because that gap should have been pinched down because, say, John Allen should have realized, like, oh, this guard seems to want me to go this direction. I need to stop and push back against him and see if I can, bump into the running back, or at the very least close down his space. And so I think that the middle of the defense has been really frustrating. I think that at the end of the day, that's something that will get better because those two are really talented. But they are definitely being paid like they are guys that should be having sacks and pressures and tackles, frankly, at a rate that's higher than what they're doing right now. So it is still a work in progress. It is still something where I go, these are signs of players that haven't played together and played in a new system, or are playing in a new system, and we're going to continue to hopefully watch them grow and get better rapidly. And by the way, for as many challenges on the back end as Cincinnati is going to present to you next week with Burrow and Chase, and we'll see about T. Higgins, they haven't run the ball very well this year. And so maybe it's a chance to get a bit of a get-right game on that part of the defense, even if there's a lot of reasons to be scared about the other parts. And I would say those things also work together, by the way. The Commanders have had to play some more conservative coverage structures, which means fewer bodies in the box, and that has certainly hurt them as well in terms of the run defense. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. And when we get back, more of your calls. It's a Vibe Check Tuesday. We got a couple of lines open, a couple of folks there. We pick up right away with the calls next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. You can leave us a comment there on a Vibe Check Tuesday, where we check how you're feeling about the Commanders through a couple of weeks here. 1-1 is the record. How you feeling about it? 301-230-0980. Let's go to Gary in Upper Marlboro. Gary, how are you feeling about this 1-1 start and about the game on Sunday?
Good afternoon, gentlemen. Pessimistic, okay? The fact of the matter is they got an emotional tear down the goalpost type win against a bottom feeder in the NFL, and they needed help to do that, okay? I can't remember the last time this franchise has had a win against a fully healthy team where they clearly look like the best team. Okay, I just can't. It's always these wins that they need to, scrape out at the end, where they could have easily lost the game. And this goes, beyond Ron and the last regime. That win yesterday or day before yesterday. It looks like those wins they've had over the years. And at the end of the day, they do no good for the franchise. Okay, you have these emotional wins that you have a little 4-game stretch.
Gary, I'm going to pause you for a second. You don't watch a lot of other NFL games, do you?
No, you're absolutely wrong. I watch all the NFL games.
Okay, but you've never been
I know what every team is doing.
Okay, that's great. You're clearly not emotionally invested in any other game because every win in the NFL is emotional, no matter who you beat. This is what games in the NFL feel like.
No, that's not true. The Cowboys got beat 44-19.
Yeah, and they were devastated about it, and the Saints were elated because that's how the NFL works. Football, you put so much into it.
Wins. I'm talking about emotional wins with teams you shouldn't have emotional wins with. I'm talking about beating a team and being the dominant team. Okay,
that's not emotional. That has nothing to do with emotion. Like, you need to pick a different word then. And by the way, did you think this team was good? As in the Commanders?
No. No, what I'm saying, the question is whether or not I'm optimistic or pessimistic. I'm pessimistic, and I'm giving you the reasons why. The Giants were a team that they should have beaten going away.
Based off what?
Okay. Oh, if there was any game that they were going to do that should have been it. The Giants looked awful the last week. They were getting hammered in the press. They were talking about firing the coach, benching the quarterback. This was a prime opportunity.
And Gary, if they don't go 0 of 7 in the red zone, they easily could have won by 15 points. Like that, they said 8 drives in the game. One was a kneel down before halftime. They scored on the other 7. Do they need to fix the red zone stuff? Yeah, but you can spin it every which way you want to. I'm not going to tell you how to feel. I am going to evaluate your reasons because otherwise it'd be pretty boring radio. And I think your reasons, frankly, don't make any sense at all.
They don't make sense that the Giants, who were picked to be either the last team in the NFL or second to the last team in the NFL, that it took you a last-second field goal when their field goal kicker was hurt on a fluke play, and you're saying that's a reason to be optimistic.
I think that I'm not evaluating wins and losses this season, and I don't get why you are.
What you're asking us, what are you talking about, Craig? You're asking us whether or not we should be optimistic or pessimistic. And I'm giving you the reasons why.
But Gary, here's my question. What are you pessimistic about? Their chances to make the playoffs this season?
No, what are you asking us the question for? You came up with it.
I'm asking you how you feel.
And I said I'm pessimistic, and
I'm asking you now for more clarity on what you are pessimistic about. Is it this season? Is it about the long-term project that they're embarking on as a franchise?
It's the whole season, because this looks like more of the same. The defense is awful. Like the prior caller said, we got 2 guys sitting in the middle that are getting paid like they're the best defensive linemen in football, and you don't hear their names. This is not just this season, and we're giving all these excuses for these guys. Last year, they're just not being coached properly. Okay, they're going to get a new coach in here. And now it's, they don't know the defense. Okay, no. These guys are not playing properly. The conversation that we had on one of these shows about moving Allen at the trade deadline, I think that is spot on.
Yeah, of course it's in play if they don't play better. Like, of course it would be in play. Like, I didn't shut that down. I just said, like, hey, if they're bad and he's playing well enough to have a market, then that becomes a different conversation, and that's a fine needle to thread. But I guess my point would be, Gary, that if you had high expectations of this season, that was probably a mistake that anybody who's been paying attention could have told you about ahead of time.
No.
And if you're pessimistic about the long term, okay, then what are you pessimistic about? They're right on track.
Well, so I'm supposed to be optimistic that they're going to be 5-12? That's not the reason why you asked the question, Craig. You said you're asking the callers whether or not they're optimistic at 1-1 or pessimistic at 1-1, and I answered your question. Now you're saying I should be optimistic because they're in line to be 5-12?
Well, actually, technically they're not. They're technically in line to be 8-9 or 9-8, but that's, the math is the math. I guess, Gary, you cracked me up because you've been calling sporadically all off season, and you basically are just a hater every single time, and I don't really know what it is that you want out of this franchise that's remotely realistic. That's what genuinely humors me about your calls.
Craig, you can call me a hater all you want. I'm looking at this not through rose-colored glasses, okay? I'm calling based because
you've actually self-diagnosed here very well. You are looking at this through absurdly pessimistic colored glasses. I don't know what color pessimism is, but your inability to see any positivity in what is a long-term, multi-year project is chef's kiss on the nose, perfect for a football fan who lives in and dies with every single game without a broader vision.
You're wrong, Craig, because I said positive things about the quarterback. I've said positive things about the quarterback. Okay?
And what realistically did you expect to go well this year outside of that?
What? I didn't. I called your show right after they signed these free agents, and I told you none of these guys move the needle, and they're not moving the needle. Okay? You jumped on my throat saying because I said that Dorrance Armstrong wasn't any better than Chase Young. Okay? I told you that. Okay? And you jumped down my throat. You hung up on me. All right? The fact of the matter is maybe you are too rose-colored. Okay?
I don't think I'm rose-colored. I think I'm realistic. And by the way, I think Frankie Louvu and Bobby Wagner both played better on Sunday than they did in week 1. And I think they'll continue to get better within this season. I think that's where we differ, Gary, is I can look at what is happening and say, yeah, it's not very good right now, but there are reasons to believe it could get better. And there's also potential that it doesn't. Like, we don't know, where you are determined that currently the status of this team as is right now is how they will be indefinitely. And that I don't understand at all.
No, I never said that. I said they're going to be 5-12. You're putting words in my mouth. I said they're going to be 5-12. What do you think they're going to be?
I think they'll be slightly better than that. I probably think they win 6 or 7 games, and depending on how quickly they can turn certain parts of this around, they could even do better, but realistically, like 6 or 7 wins. But I also think that the idea that they can't improve within that construct, and that the things that need to get better on the current roster aren't going to improve within that construct. Like, I think that those things can all happen simultaneously. I'm just not that concerned with wins and losses in 2024 because they had to dig out of a hole, and you seem to not want to acknowledge how deep the hole is that they had to dig out of, and that it's impossible to fill that hole in one offseason because the best players in the league aren't available in free agency. You have to draft them and then let them develop. It's a multi-year project. So they didn't move free agents that move the needle, or sign free agents that move the needle. No kidding. That's not how free agency works 98% of the time.
Oh, no, Craig. No, Craig, because you jumped down my throat the last time because you disagreed with me. And you also disagreed with me on that when I told you that people in the building were talking about moving Jamin Davis to Micah Parsons and rushing the passer. And you jumped down my throat, and you can go back and listen, saying, who told you that? Who told you that? And I was right because I heard it on your station, other people talking about it. So the only reason why I'm pointing that out is when you talk all the time, you're not always right. These are all opinions.
This is
you're
true.
Asking your callers to ask for we were optimistic or pessimistic, and I'm pessimistic. Okay, if you don't want anybody to say they're pessimistic, just say, hey, this is a day of optimism. I'm looking for optimism.
I'm not saying that, Gary. And also, I don't really understand why you feel the need to be incredibly confrontational about it when I'm simply asking for things and then pushing back saying, hey, can you explain this? Can you explain that? Like, it's just, The point is actually not
Because-
optimistic or pessimistic,
Greg,
Gary.
you said,
Gary, hold on.
show, You call out. You said, wait a minute.
I'm going to put Gary on hold since he can't seem to have a conversation where he lets me talk. And I have the ability to do that, which is fun. The point is actually not the optimism or the pessimism. As I am fond of saying, if you listen regularly, which Gary does, it's not about the graphic. It's not about the rankings. It's not about the word. It's about the conversation and talking the things out and having a good conversation about the team where we all maybe learn a little bit. And Gary's made some really good points in here. I'm not trying to say that Gary doesn't know anything. It's fun to needle Gary because he has certain buttons that apparently I can hit really well. But the point is to have the discussion and say, okay, what were our expectations? Well, are they meeting them? Okay, if we're meeting them, then is that optimistic, pessimistic? Is that, and by the way, I never actually said you have to call in and say optimistic or pessimistic, and it doesn't have to be black and white. It's a vibe check. I asked how you're feeling. It can be conflicted. JT in the last segment said, I'm conflicted. Here's the things I like. Here's the things I don't like. And Gary, what I don't understand is the need to just completely like pick a fight and lean into the full pessimism when especially if you are right and what you thought was going to happen on some level is, but also I don't understand the idea that what they are right now is permanently what they are or what they are for the rest of the season because it's week 2 and teams change throughout seasons.
Craig, am I back on?
You are back on. I'll give you the last word, then we got to go
Okay.
because we're out of segment time.
All right. I appreciate it, but listen, the reason why you said that I'm calling and I'm just a hater. You said that you said that about me.
Yeah,
And
I did.
That's not true. I call all the stations. Okay, I don't just listen to your show. I like your show, but I call in other stations.
Okay.
Okay, I am optimistic about the quarterback, and I've said that several times. I'm
Okay.
optimistic about the way that the offseason went. Okay, I'm concerned about the on-field, and that's why I called your show to say I am pessimistic. There are too many holes on this team, and if you're asking about pessimistic long-term beyond this season, that's a different discussion. But when I thought you were calling about this season. So
I
that's the
said
reason why I'm calling
it's
in.
an open-ended question, Gary, which is why I've spent the last 15 minutes trying to get you to clarify what it is the hell you're talking about, and now we've landed here. Gary, thanks for the call. It's always fun. Call back another time because we're out of time in this one. We'll take more of your calls on a 5 Check Tuesday next. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. It is a Vibe Check Tuesday. We're going to try to roll through these last couple of calls here a little quicker. It's always fun to spar with Gary in Upper Marlboro, so we took our fight a couple extra rounds there, but it was a good time. I enjoyed it. If you're listening on the radio and like, man, that felt intense. If you're watching on the YouTube stream, you saw me chuckling throughout like half that call. So it's fun to wind people up sometimes. Sometimes y'all do it to me, so it only seems fair. 301-230-0980. Let's get through these last. We got 4 calls on hold right now. I'm gonna Anthony, if we could close out the lines. Let's try to get to these 4, and then we'll get to Mitch Tishler coming up at 5 o'clock. All right, Rob, get us started. Sorry to make you wait there. What's your vibe on this Vibe Check Tuesday?
Okay, so I'm feeling pretty good, Craig. I think, everybody's upset. We all want to be negative about this, that, the third. I'm feeling pretty good. When's the last time we had 2 games without a turnover? The kicker is new, but when's the last time we kicked a bunch of field goals in a game and actually made them? Whatever. So we lost the Giants game, quote unquote, by their Graham Gano going out. It doesn't really matter. I think that the moves that they've made have been pretty decent. Noah Brown, I do believe he's playing better than Jahan would have. But a big question that I said this to Anthony, but I want to ask your opinion on this.
Sure.
Should we have moved one of those middle guys during the trade deadline as opposed to someone like Sweat?
Yeah, that's a good and somewhat complicated question. The simple answer is probably not. And the reason is not because you're not a better football team today with Montez Sweat playing the way he is versus John Allen and Deron Payne playing the way they are. Just very simply, the contract situation is more complicated and I think in the end of the day, like one, Sweat was coming up on the end of his rookie deal. He was due a bunch of money. Paying him that at this stage of the rebuild limits you in other places. I think they're better off not having paid that money, where John and Deron had already been paid, and thus if you trade them last year, there's dead cap money that you have to take on, which I know is incredibly unsexy, like super businessy answer, but it's a huge factor in it. The thing is, though, and I hate to say this because like John Allen's given a lot to this city. He's from here, trading the hometown kid. Like it's complicated, but from a financial standpoint, you can trade him this trade deadline, and there's no financial ramifications. There's no more dead money. There's no prorated signing bonus. There's no future anything you have to worry about. If he doesn't fit anymore in your long-term plans, you could flip him this time. Obviously, they still have to go find an edge, but I do think that that and corner seem to be shaping up through 2 weeks in a training camp. Their number one priorities going into the draft next year.
Right. So I do have one more question for you. How do you feel about the offense not turning everything over or not turning the ball over yet?
Great.
I understand that. Exactly. We're not doing the things that we did before, and it's like small steps as opposed to giant leaps, right?
Yeah.
And the more and more cohesive as we get, will be better. And not to take away from the last caller, but when's the last time we've seen something like this? When's the last time that we've actually had an opportunity to be optimistic during every game? We're at least in it. I agree.
Yeah, I think, Rob, I got to let you run because we got a couple more calls and we're running up against the clock. But, I think what you're feeling, Rob, is competence. What you're feeling is an organization that actually has professionals in place and knows what they're doing and is building things the right way. And that doesn't guarantee anything. But doing it the other way guarantees nothing. And I do think you have to. And this ultimately, like to go back to Gary's call, is my substantive disagreement with Gary is – he's like, I'm pessimistic. This year, they're not very good. And I'm like, there was no planet that they could have been good this year. Not with the way the salary cap works, not with the way the draft works, not with the way the free agency works. There is no planet that they could be good this year. They are going to be better than last year. And that is like when he talks about, oh, these guys don't move the needle. They do. They only move it so far, but they're not going to be a 4-win team this year. I would be stunned. Something terrible would have to happen for them to be a 4-win team. They deserved to be a 4-win team last year. That is moving the needle. And I do think this is also a team that showed growth from training camp to week 1, showed growth from week 1 to week 2. And I would expect, while it's not going to be linear, by the time week 9 rolls around, they're a hell of a lot better of a football team than they are right now because they're still learning each other. Coaches and players, coaches learning their players learning their coaches, players learning each other. 301-230-0980. Let's go to Andre in Alexandria. Andre, what's your vibe on this Vibe Check Tuesday?
Well, I feel good about the offense. They're not where I want them to be, but I like the direction they're going in to keep it short because, you're short on time. And I'm getting pretty sick and tired of Payne and Allen making excuses every single year. They've been here for years. And every year, they're not dominant. They let the offensive team or linemen on the other teams dominate what they do instead of they dominate what the offensive linemen do. They're being controlled regardless who the coach, who the owners are, and who players around them. They always get taken out the game. They don't enforce their will or their talent on the offensive line that they're going against. And I'm pretty done with their excuses. If we could trade both of them, get rid of both of them. That's where I'm at.
Andre, thanks for the call. I get why Andre's frustrated. I get defensively why you're not psyched about what this team did over the weekend. I do think that is an overreaction. I do think that they are probably playing better than people realize because people think that they're like the worst 2 defensive tackles in the league right now. And that's definitely not true. But they definitely need to also play better. Like, I do think that is an important point. I don't want it to come off as whether it's making excuses, whether it is whatever other version of that you want to make it. Like, they got to be better. But I also understand some of the reasons why they're not better right now. And some of it is them not playing well and like they need to execute on a higher level. Some of this is they are not fully being set up to be great in the way that, maybe a 2022 version of them, 2021, when these guys had monster years, that they were kind of built and set up structurally to play better. Right now, unfortunately, the back end coverage is so bad that they are being hung out to dry a little bit longer. They require more bodies in pass coverage. So some of the blitz schemes that they want to roll up that could result in some more pressures and some more sacks. Some of the box counts that they want to run or they want to have in terms of bodies down by the line of scrimmage, like those aren't available because they need to have extra players back, aka 2 high safety looks instead of 1. And what that means is, I know this is like super football nerdy and it's going to sound like excuses, but like this is the reality. Take it for what it is. If I'm a quarterback and I see a good look to run into and my double teams are set up perfectly because the other team is scared of, my stud first round pick receiver hitting a 70-yarder, I'm going to tap my helmet, check to the run, and we're going to run into a great look. And that's what happened to them a lot last week is Daniel Jones looked up, saw, hey, we can double team Allen, we can double team Payne. Do those guys need to play better against double teams? Abso-freaking-lutely. Both things can be true at once. But, man, that is a tough job. And so I have, to that level, some sympathy for those guys. But within that context, they need to play better. Okay, real quick, last but not least, Tion's with us to finish out Vibe Check Tuesday. Tion, I got like 30, 45 seconds for you. Sorry to keep it short, but Tishler's coming up at 5. Last word goes to you, though, my friend.
Okay, man, no problem. Thank you for having me. Right now, the vibe check for me is this is fantastic. I'm actually seeing the offense being built, a Commander's offense being built from the ground up. First thing assessment is I know that Jaden Daniels' floor is he's going to be a good game manager, and we're seeing the offense grow around it. Now, what I want to see is if we start getting leads, are they going to release the defense and make them like the old Indianapolis defense? Since we can't cover anybody, I think later on in the season we're going to become a more blitz-heavy defense when we have a lead. And I think it's going to be all pertinent on our offense getting us the lead. I want to see how that looks.
Tion, I think that's a great point, too. Appreciate the call, and hopefully we can get you a little more space to chat in the future. They have been in some bad time score situation deals. So do they have the opportunities later in the season to play differently because this offense can get up? obviously, if they just finish in the red zone, right? Like if you want to be pessimistic, red zone, terrible. Defense gives up a little too much. They got lucky and no kicker for the Giants. If you want to be optimistic about the game on Sunday, it's also really easy. They could have easily won like 35-18, right? They could have just as easily scored a bunch of those in the red zone as opposed to kicking 7 field goals. Even if they get half of those in the end zone, and on like half of those drives, they were in 3rd or 4th and 1 inside the 10-yard line, could have had a fresh set of downs, and they jumped off sides. Like not even, hey, it's 3rd and 1 at the 1, and now you got 6 yards to score and 1 play to do it. No. They were like 3rd and 1 at the 3 and would have had 4 downs to score from the 2, and they couldn't stay on sides. I'd have to think that gets better. I have to think that gets coached up. And if it does, then what does the red zone offense look like? And also in training camp, there were some stretches where they were dominant in the red zone. So I think that there is the potential there, including, by the way, they just torched, I think it was Miami in the joint practice. So it's not like they just did it to their own defense. So I think that's something to watch moving forward. Okay, Mitch Tishler joins us next. Thanks, everyone, calling in on the Vibe Check Tuesday. That was great. Tishler Tuesday next before the Take Command tape breakdown of Jaden Daniels at 5:30. Well done, Anthony. Well done. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. It is 5 o'clock on a Tuesday, which means it's time, plus you knew it from the air horns, for a Tishler Tuesday. That's today's Not My Beat.
Today's top story from the perspective of someone who's there.
You are looking live.
This just in.
Not My Beat.
Mitchell, how are you, my friend?
I am doing fantastic. Great job with the air horns. That was well done.
Anthony, anything you'd like to say?
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay.
That was better than last week.
I mean, what could be worse? Although I still am kind of impressed that Anthony found the equivalent of a practice is over air horn. That still is just an unbelievable find. If you were looking for it, the fact that you found it by accident is kind of mind-numbing. The other thing that we need to do from like a business standpoint, Mitch, is we need to we need to start collecting some Tishler clips for an hour opener. Like Phillips is a regular guest, has one. Standig has some from his time on the show as a regular. We got a couple other folks that have kind of their signature, hey, this hour so-and-so is coming on. So we can't really try for it, but we have to be on our P's and Q's to say, hey, let's cut that. Let's make that an hour open for Mitch Tishler.
I got you.
I will try to do as many viral clips as I can. How about that?
You can't try. They just have to happen. But I have faith in us, Mitch. I have faith. Okay, let's get to the football, shall we? The question I'm basically going to ask you every week on Tuesday to get started. It just is a jumping off point. We now have had time to digest. We've watched whatever tape we're going to watch. We've heard some of the participants talk, including Dan Quinn, in a Monday after he's watched the tape. As you think back to the weekend, what's the thing that you're still thinking about, whether it's a good thing, a bad thing, or I'm kind of really interested in watching this thing?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think you have to start with the good thing, which is the fact that the offense ran up 425 yards. Jaden Daniels led a 2-minute drive for a win, in his first opportunity to really run one of those in game. And to me, obviously the touchdown situation is not ideal, but at the same time, it's kind of a double-edged sword because they did move the ball. Both games, they've moved the ball very well on offense. Jaden looks good. I thought he looked a little better in the passing game this week than he did last week. So I think that's the kind of positive side of it you have to look as you talk about this win.
No, I agree with you. So I haven't had a chance to talk about the red zone stuff today. So let's dive in there. What is your hypothesis on what happened in the red zone on Sunday?
Yeah, I think early on they struggled because, everything gets sped up in the red zone. Everything's a lot quicker. Jaden's dealing with a defense that wasn't really bringing a ton of pressure. They were kind of sitting back and trying to force him to do something. But ultimately, one of the things that I kind of took away from it was the fact that the Giants couldn't kick field goals, I think affected kind of the play calling in the red zone because you knew anytime you were able to put points on the board, you were making it that much more difficult for the Giants knowing that they weren't able to do that on the other side. So I think as the game kind of kept going, I thought they got a little more conservative in the red zone than maybe they would have been. Nonetheless, all the penalties, which is a whole other issue to discuss. But I think they kind of set themselves up and recognized that, kicking a bunch of field goals was going to probably be enough to win this football game. And ultimately, it was.
Yeah, I think that's great perspective because one of the things that we talked about on Take Command this morning when Logan and I were talking about it was just how conservative the calls were down there. And I think a couple of things happened. I think one, they're still slowly taking off the training wheels of the drop back game. And the most dangerous place you have drop back issues is the red zone because the space is so tight. And just watch red zone this Sunday. Anybody who is not going to be watching the Commanders because, they don't play till Monday night, watch red zone, watch how many red zone interceptions there are. There's a ton because the space is super tight. Quarterbacks have to force balls in tight windows. And Jaden Daniels is a rookie through 2 games, has 0 interceptions. And that's part of the reason why. And then, Mitch, I think one of the other things, too, is the Giants did a really good job defending the quarterback run game. And I think that is going to be such a big part of how they score down there, that between the penalties and a good job on a couple of key snaps by the Giants, and then you combine that with the conservative nature of the calls. And I think that's probably a smart point that you made about why they might have been so conservative. Like, And that way, that's the explanation. Not saying that that's actually a good thing. Hey, 7 field goals, cool. But I'd rather have 7 field goals and win than, oh, well, they went 6 of 7 and that one interception that really cost them.
Sure, but you go back to last week and they kicked both field goals, they made both field goals, he would have led 5 of 8 scoring drives. And then you look at what they did this week where they didn't have to punt. You know, if we're talking about this season through the lens of how does Jaden look, I think that you can't be anything but happy with what you've seen through the first 2 weeks. I mean, the only ball that he's really put in peril was the throw over to Zach Ertz, who just made an incredible play to rip the ball out of the defender's hands. But you know, other than a kneel down at the end of the first half, they scored every drive, and to me, that's a pretty big plus when you're looking at, you know, big picture what you're hoping to see from Jaden as this season continues.
Yeah, used to be number 5 on the field bad, now number 5 on the field good. That's, you know, all due respect to Tress, that's just math, Mitch.
Yeah, and listen, Tress wasn't wearing 5 and he didn't get a chance to see the field.
Nope.
Always a good thing, right?
You should have switched to number 10 sooner. In hindsight, if that's all we needed, okay then. Mitch Tishler, Beltway Football Podcast with us here on the Hoffman Show. A couple more things on the offense, and let's dive into the defense because that is, of course, the source of much consternation around Command Land. On the offensive line, Mitch, Brandon Coleman, another up and down day. The line overall, I think, did some really nice things. But what do you make of how they're handling getting Coleman involved? And if you're them, do you continue with that experiment, or do you look at the way Quinn has played and go, maybe Big Luke is just going to have to do fine for right now?
No, I think they're going to continue rotating Brandon Coleman in. One of the questions I want to ask of Cliff and Dan this week is how comfortable they are with what they've seen from Brandon Coleman, and if they are comfortable, because last week Cliff Kingsbury did say they want to get to a point where they have kind of a consistent starting 5. Are you comfortable with Brandon Coleman at that left tackle? And if so, do you start working some right side in for Cornelius Lucas in practice? Because, you know, Andrew Wiley has been not good. He's been not good in the pass game, but good in the run game. So, you know, it's kind of a double-edged sword there too. But I think ultimately Brandon Coleman within the next week or two takes over, you know, I don't want to say all of the reps, but the vast majority of them. And quite frankly, had he not gotten banged up a little bit early in the game on Sunday against the Giants, I think we would have seen more snaps from him and fewer from Cornelius Lucas. And so, you know, Brandon Coleman is going to have some up and downs. He's still going through his kind of preseason, his first look at, you know, NFL defenses and the speed of the game and all the things that, you know, you always talk about with a rookie. But, you know, his ability to get downfield and help out in the short passing game and screen game is just such an advantage to have. And I think that Cliff Kingsbury and Dan Quinn, you know, look at that and see that and recognize, you know, what he can bring to this offense and how much he can help turn a 10-yard play into a 50-yard play because of his ability to get down and pick off a DB.
They also are super realistic about their own limitations in a way that previous staffs have not been. And maybe it's in part because some of these players they picked or some of these players that they're playing, although a lot of it's around Jaden and Coleman, who they did select, but like they're not as blind to the talent as maybe some previous regimes that were like, oh, this guy's going to be awesome. It's like, yeah, but he's a rookie. He's not awesome yet. You have to plan for that. You have to be realistic with that. And I think they've done a good job with that, limiting Jaden maybe almost too much through 2 games. And they started to open it up a little bit as the game went on Sunday. And I think Coleman probably plays a role in that. I do want to double click on your Wiley point though, because I do really like that. What have you made of Wiley? Because there is like people want to look at when he gets beat and it's really easy to and be like, that guy sucks. But realistically, there's also some stuff that he's doing that's really, really good and really high level, especially in the run game. How do you evaluate that right side of the line so far this season, and specifically Wiley?
Yeah, I mean, that was probably one of Sam Cosmi's poorest games, and he still did pretty well outside of the, you know, the penalty situation that they were in and that he was in. But with Wiley, you know, I think what you said is an important point, that this staff has a self-recognition of kind of what they can do, you know, now versus what they ultimately want to be able to do. And you see in, you know, more obvious passing downs, them sending Austin Eckler over to the right to help pick up, you know, to help Wiley out, to help get a chip. They're lining up tight ends over there to help him out. It's just so obvious when Wiley gets beat because he gets beat to the inside far too easily and far too often. And when that happens, that rusher gets a free run at Jaden. And it's just so obvious that, Wiley, made a mistake or overset kind of whatever the technical issue is for why that happens. And but he's done well in the run game. And, as much as you want to complain about, the sacks and pressures and, the penalties and the false starts and stuff, this team ran for 200-plus yards and averaged more than 6 yards on the ground. That's a recipe that kind of no matter who you play, you're going to have a chance to win if you're able to kind of dominate like that. And for all the consternation about this offensive line as a whole and what they were going to look like, running for 215, regardless of who it's against, means something. And you have to kind of tip your cap to them for how they're able to road grade like that. And when you look at the Jaden sacks, I think he got sacked 5 times, and 2 of them I counted were kind of O-line mistakes / issues. And 3 of them were him not quite getting rid of the ball quick enough. And, I think on Sunday against the Giants, he showed a little bit of kind of that Sam Howell stuff that we saw last year, where he really wanted to make a big play and danced around the pocket a little more than maybe he could have or should have. And he could have gotten rid of the ball either early to a running back or, thrown it away and lived to fight another day. So these are all, growing points for Jaden and things that he's going to learn. And I think, a lot of these rookie QBs come in after dominating college and being the most athletic person on the field. And all of a sudden, you're used to being able to do all those things. I think on Sunday night, you saw that with Caleb Williams a fair amount. So it's just a point that these guys are going to grow and continue to grow. But ultimately, I think the O-line has done a pretty good job through 2 weeks. And, I think there's obviously room for improvement. But at the end of the day, I think you can't be too harsh on the group as a whole.
No, and, I know it is the Giants, but that's a good front seven. Like a really good front seven. Bobby Okereke's real good. Micah McFadden's real good. And Dexter Lawrence is one of the 2 or 3 best defensive tackles in the entire league. And they ran for 200 yards and largely did a really good job on Lawrence inside. So I think they deserve a ton of credit for that, even if, like you said, there's some other things where you're like, okay, well, let's continue to work on that, continue to clean that up as the year goes. Mitch Tishler, co-host of the Beltway Football Podcast with us here on the Hoffman Show. Okay, Mitch, other side of the ball. That's where things get interesting. I'm sure you and JP talked about Allen and Payne. Where are y'all at on, and where are you at on what these guys are being asked to do and how they're doing it?
Right. I think that's the important thing about what they're being asked to do and how they're doing it. We heard a lot from the coaching staff during training camp and preseason about how he wants those guys to put their heads down and go after the ball. But I think you're seeing them kind of eating up blocks a little bit, particularly in the run game. I think you see those guys kind of welcoming those doubles to clear up the run space for Lubu and Bobby Wagner. And early on in that game, I think you saw, that kind of play out pretty nicely because both Frankie and Bobby had, nice defensive plays either at the line of scrimmage or just behind it because they were able to run free. The other side of that is you got to see these guys in the box score more than they are. I mean, they are 2 of your highest paid players, and you talk about on the other side of the ball, how good Dexter Lawrence was and how much, the Commanders offense had to plan for Dexter Lawrence. And I think you saw in the blocking scheme, they weren't going to let Dexter beat them. If you have John and Duran, who are 2 guys who should be thought of in the same ilk as Dexter Lawrence, Duran Payne didn't have a stat, and John Allen had 2 shared tackles, which isn't enough from the 2 of them. And more so in the passing game, this is 2 straight weeks now that they haven't been able to get after the quarterback or get the guy down. And quite frankly, I think that issue is leading to a lot of the issues in the secondary as well, because this defense is designed for those guys to the secondary to kind of be in one-on-ones. And part of it is there are extra bodies available to get after the quarterback. And when they don't get there, those guys have to cover longer. Guys come open. There are a bunch of issues. Think about all those crossing routes from
neighbors.
Yeah. If you can get John and Duran to put a little pressure up the middle, get Daniel Jones or whatever quarterback it is to move off his spot and not be able to sit there and just look freely over the middle of the field, I think think that looks a lot differently. And so, I need to see more from those two guys. Those two guys are making too much money, are too big a part of what this defensive plan is to have as little impact as they're having.
I think that's really well put. They're being asked to do stuff that's hard. Eating double teams is hard and it sucks. And being primary pass rushers as internal guys when the other team isn't particularly scared of the edges is hard. And especially when there's probably going to be a lot of quick losses for you on the outside. But they also, with all of that said, they just need to be better. They need to figure out how to eat the double teams better and make the holes a yard, 2 yards narrower for Wagner and Luvu to fill and Chin to fill. And then the other thing, too, is if they can just sustain some of this on the outside and not have to have the extra resources dedicated to the box, or they can dedicate extra resources to the box, that geometry change, I think will help them a lot, Mitch. And I'm very curious to see what kind of tolerance they have moving forward, what kind of risk tolerance they have in the back end moving forward. In the fourth quarter, they just were we're going to play cover 2 because Malik Neighbors is killing us and we can't afford to be man-to-man or have a single person responsible for him. And we need bodies. And are they going to continue to do that? Or are they going to get back to what they want to be and live with a little bit of risk on the outside and hope that, whoever is playing corner opposite of St. Juice and St. Juice pick up their game, or in Ben's case, continue to pick up his game a little bit?
Yeah, and I think that's a good point. I mean, Benjamin St. Juice gets a lot of hate, I guess, for his play. He played pretty well on Sunday. I mean, aside from the forced the punch out, the forced fumble, he was solid. And when they started kind of having him be the guy to cover Malik Neighbors, you saw his Malik Neighbors production kind of work its way down. So I was pleased with what I saw from Benjamin St. Juice on that side of the field. As you talk about getting after the quarterback, the interior guys are the guys that are paid and you need to see more from. But the guys on the edges also. I mean, Dorrance Armstrong had 8 sacks last year in Dallas in limited work. We haven't seen him beat a tackle yet and kind of, get a free run at a quarterback or at least, force a guy out. And on the other side, whether it's Cleveland Farrell or Luvu lining up there, you need more pressure across the front. And the D tackles are the guys that are easy to focus on because they are, the named players. But those D ends have to do a better job of getting after him as well. And if they're able to start getting pressure on a quarterback, and to me, I would start bringing extra guys to make that happen. You're going to help your guys on the outside because they don't have to cover so long.
They are. The problem is right now because teams feel the Giants basically were we're not going to give up sacks because we know that if we give our guys time downfield, they're going to get open. And there was 7-man pros, and so Allen's trying to beat a double team. Payne's trying to beat a double team. Dorrance Armstrong's got a tight end, but the running back's over there, so he's facing a double team. And it's well, okay, who's got a one-on-one? We got one guy with a one-on-one, and that guy's facing a pretty good tackle. Yikes, that's a tough look. And so eventually, it is a chicken and egg thing, Mitch, where I'm just I don't know which one's going to have to crack first, but something's going to have to crack because the way the coverage and the rush marry right now is not a very good marriage. And until that becomes a healthy relationship, if you will, I think this defense is going to struggle on some level against the pass. We'll talk about it more, obviously, after we see what Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase do to it. Oh, yay. That's next Monday night. Mitch and JP have a bunch of pods before then. They'll do their instant reaction show after and all the deals you can look forward to from the Beltway Football Podcast, not only in a podcast feed, Mitch, but on television or in the Monumental app on video. You guys got all kinds of stuff happening.
Yeah, listen, Saturdays and Sundays, you have a pregame show that airs on Monumental Sports Network on TV. And then Sundays after the games, catch us live on the app, on the website. We're doing our post-game pods live on TV, tons of graphics and video, really cool stuff. And you get to get instant reactions from us.
Love it. Very fancy. I was going to go down the mindful demure path, but you know what? I'm not going to do that. We're not going to do that. Mitch Tishler, everybody. Check out Beltway Football Pod and all of those places we just described. And Mitch, I guess we get instant reaction style from you because you'll be on day after game next week. You get the Tuesday shift next Tuesday, except for they play on Monday. How exciting.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. I think that Monday night game is going to be quite interesting with with Jamar and Burrow. He's talking about teams that like to use 7-man pass pros.
Yeah.
You let Jamar Chase run around in that secondary long enough, he's going to find a way to get open. So those guys have their hands full Monday night.
For sure, and we'll see if T. Higgins is back as well. Mitch Tishler, everybody. Thanks, buddy. Talk to you later in the week.
Absolutely. Thanks so much.
That's Mitch Tishler with us here on the Hoffman Show. When we get back from one guy who talks about football on a podcast to the football podcast that I do. Because on Tuesdays at 5:30, we give you the Take Command Jaden Daniels Tape Tuesday breakdown. That is next inside the tape of how Jaden played in his second game, his first win here on the Hoffman Show. It's the Hoffman Show. We're on the Team 980. We're always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Streaming live on YouTube as well at the Team 980. Let's see what the YouTube stream's doing today. People are all locked in. People liking Mitch's idea of checking in on, hey, could we see Cornelius Lucas at right tackle potentially and situationally if Andrew Wiley continues to have the ups and the downs and Brandon Coleman takes over at left. So stick a pin in that. People, by the way, Anthony, very upset with Gary in Upper Marlboro.
Man, there were people calling in. Yeah. There were people calling in just to say something about Gary. They didn't call in.
Their vibe check was hang up on Gary.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, okay. That makes me feel better that I didn't come off like a jerk. Because I feel like I needled Gary pretty good. And sometimes I'm scared that even though I might be having fun, that everyone listening isn't. But it seems like people were mad at Gary and not me. Sorry, Gary. But I'm selfish in that regard. Anyway, apropos of none of that, every Tuesday we watch the tape. We lock it in. And actually Mondays or now we watch the tape. And then by Tuesday we talk about it. We being myself and Logan Paulson. And on Tuesdays here on the Hoffman Show, we make sure that you don't have to go hunting to find out what happened with Jaden Daniels. We bring it right to you. So straight from Take Command, our Take Command Tape Tuesday, Jaden Daniels breakdown here on the Hoffman Show. So that brings us to Jaden Daniels' performance, Logan. And I think that there is obviously a ton to like. He has been clearly the best of the rookie quarterbacks so far, which I think is good perspective. You look at the struggles that Caleb has had and the struggles that Bo Nix has had. But I do think that there's like some lines of delineation starting to form and some things that I'm starting to have questions about. And the questions, to be clear, are not, can he do this? Like it's how long till he can do this? And that's in the drop back game. And so I think a lot of the questions that folks have wind up are going to be answered as we discuss this and kind of parse this out, which is, some of the red zone issues. If you need to be able to drop back and read it out and it's really, really hard in the red zone and your OC is like, I don't know if my guy's up to that, want to keep the leverage down, that can be part of the reason why that happens. Why are there not as many explosive plays as maybe we expected? There's zero throws down the field, 20-plus yards in the air in this game. He did have 9 in the intermediate, and he was 7 of 9 in the second half. So there is some really good stuff in that intermediate, but no big, long throws down the field over the top. So what are you seeing when you watch? We'll add the rest of the offense back in a second, because there's obviously the playmaking and his job well done executing some of these box counts and things like that to make sure they're in the right plays. Like there's a lot of good stuff, but I know these are people's biggest questions. It's my biggest question of how is Jaden progressing in the drop back game, and I'm curious what you saw when you watched it.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's did a nice job this week, especially in the second half of getting to some more of that stuff. He's a young player. He's coming along. I think the one thing, if I was going to, I just would like to talk to Cliff about this, is I felt like he was very I think on the first drive, I don't think they called a true drop back at all. I think it was all screens. I think
they
and
only
RPOs.
called like 3 in the first half.
Right, and so that is good to insulate a player, obviously, but it also makes it hard to get them in a rhythm. And so that's something, again, like that I would never have even thought about. But, I'm calling plays at a high school now. And that's something that I lose sleep over, because it's like, I want you to be as comfortable as possible. I want to deleverage you as much as possible. But if I do that too much, then you never get in the flow and rhythm of a game. And so all of a sudden when we got to have it and it's a little bit high leverage, it's third and long, and that's your first throw, like like reading the defense out and feeling the rush, you're not going to look very good, because I haven't done a good job of integrating you. So again, I like what Cliff did, but again, he's a smart guy. I'd like to just say, like, how do you walk that line? And I'm sure he'd give me some, like, it's subjective, it depends. And that's a good answer. But that's kind of what I saw, is I felt like they never, like in the first half, like there was a couple opportunities. I check my notes here in a second, but they run like a what I call like a knife concept. So it's like a post on the left. There's a high cross by number 2 on the offensive right, and then a dig by number 1 on the offensive right. So some people would say dagger, but because of how the through is coming across, like he's in the progression as opposed to dagger where he's not. And it's Luke McCaffrey, and it's like wide open. And either that is open or the dig is open. And the rush is a little bit in the face, right? It's tight, but I think if he just kind of takes a beat and throws the football, we're okay. But that's his first true like drop back of the game. And so again, like that's a little, you got to kind of my question is, does he have a feel at that point? Because obviously as the game went, he grew more confident, grew more comfortable, and had opportunities to make plays. So when I was watching Tampa Bay, I never felt like he got in that rhythm as a passer. So to me, you mentioned the 7 of 9 or whatever, the 7 completions in the second half. I thought that was really excellent to see, because he kind of had found his feet and understood what they were doing and was delivering really well-thrown footballs, obviously. So I think that's the one thing. And then in the first half, I think Cliff did a good job of calling some explosive shots down the field that the Giants, just through serendipity, kind of matched. Like one of my favorite concepts they ran was they were in a 3-receiver set to the offensive right. Zach was at number 3. He runs like a deep sit. They're playing quarters coverage. That backside quarters player looks like he's getting nosy on Zach. They run a really high post across the formation. And I don't know how the safety saw it, but he saw it and is able to kind of not take the cheese with Zach, bail underneath, and then the hook player's underneath Zach. So, like, again, they did call some stuff, but I think, again, in the first half, because there wasn't a high volume of it, I think there was maybe, like you said, maybe, I don't know, total, probably 5, like, true, like, shot, drop back type plays. And I think they did a good job matching it. And then, obviously, in the second half, we mentioned the success that they had already, so.
Yeah, I thought the sequence around the play where he gets knocked out for the play is really interesting to look at. So it's 8:16 to go in the second quarter. 1st and 10. That might have been the one you were just talking. Actually, no, I remember that play too, the one where McCaffrey screams open on that deeper cross. But on 1st and 10 on that sequence, he winds up, like, McCaffrey screams open on a crosser, and Jaden vacates a clean pocket. Winds up scrambling, and like there's a little bit of pressure, but not NFL real, like, hey, you got to go pressure. And if he just stands there and scans across the field and Luke is wide open, you're like, hey man, like we got 20 yards at least on this play. So instead, he vacates the pocket, winds up scrambling, takes a hit. Second down, they called that QB draw, which I kind of that was one play that I kind of hated. It's like, hey, your dude just got hit.
He checked to that. Jaden checked to that. So I think what he saw was, like, you have 2 backs in the backfield that looked like they were in cover 2. They kind of rotate late after the check. And so there's an extra hat there. But if they kind of kept that cover 2 shell, I like the call, because then you're plus hats. So if you get it blocked up, you're running on a safety. So I do think that's, like, again, where, you know, youth of the quarterback is a little bit of an issue, right? You give them the power to kind of get you in the right look. You say, I want this play versus something very specific. It looks like that pre-snap,
right?
Changes post-snap, and, you know, it doesn't end up looking like a great play. But if it was executed in the look you wanted, you look like a genius. You know what I mean? So I think there was some of that going on there too.
Yeah, there's also just the situation, though, right, where your quarterback just took a hit, and Cliff is probably not calling a play to get Jaden hit twice in a row. You know, it's kind of one of those.
Because he took a sack. It wasn't like a big hit, right? On 1st and 10, 2nd and 11, you're trying to get to a 3rd manageable. Don't hate the call. And then 3rd and 13 is where he gets hit in the ribs, right? That's the one you're talking about,
right? Yeah. But it's the kind of thing where, like, the check comes up in a situation where that's probably not what Cliff. Obviously, it's not what Cliff called, because it was something that they checked to.
Right.
You know, it's like when, hey, quarterback just ran 40 yards. Let's just call a handoff. No checks here, because we don't want our guy to have to go back. Like, let's give him a snap to catch his breath kind of thing. But then the 3rd and 13 is interesting. And then the plays after, I think, is when kind of he starts to get into the rhythm as a passer. And I think Cliff starts to give him some of those easier looks that we're talking about. The 3rd and 13, I feel like we should talk about Logan. Like, to me, when Dan talks about Jaden the competitor, that's the embodiment. That's now the clip that you show. And not because he got hurt at the end, but it's like, he has Eckler and Ertz as checkdowns, and neither of those guys are very likely to get the first down. The most likely option to actually convert on 3rd and 13 is Jaden running, and so he runs. And it sucks that he caught a helmet to wherever he got hit, the ribs, the gut, whatever it is that knocked the wind out of him. But it's tackle football, and sometimes that happens when guys run. But I think that it wasn't, I don't know, I don't think there was anything deeper down the field from what I saw. You can tell me if there's anything in the timing of the play that I missed. But he had Ertz, definitely could have thrown it. Had Eckler, definitely could have thrown it. Neither of those guys are probably getting more than 9 yards. It's 3rd and 13. So he says, let's party and let's go. And then from there, when he gets back in the game, they get into some of the quick game and things like that that we can talk about. But that 3rd and 13, like that is why Jaden Daniels is going to be one of the reasons why Jaden Daniels is going to be a great player in this league is because he can turn a 3rd and 13 where there's not really anything there into a first down. And most quarterbacks can't turn 3rd and 13 into anything, anytime, anywhere.
Yeah, and I think that's what makes him special, you know, and I agree with you. That's like a Skinner, like double post, high cross type of deal. So Terry's running a high cross. It's 3rd and 13. So, you know, the Giants are bailing out of there. They're standing right at the sticks. And this is why you draft him 2nd overall, or part of the reason why. And part of the reason why mobile quarterbacks are kind of becoming in vogue is because like that play is dead. You can check the ball down to Zach there. But I do think in terms of a person, and I think Zach had a great game, but I don't know if that's Zach's cup of tea and catching a flat and then trying to get 10 yards and making a guy miss. Like he's excellent at running routes and making contested catches and that stuff. Like I think Jaden's better in space at this point. So, and to your point, I think you can see him be aware, right? He's running to the first down. He checks the sticks. He kind of does like a knifing, you know, action to make sure he gets it. He does take a little bit of a shot, but that's so valuable to an offense, right? Think about if they have to punt there, right? Think about the field position game you're playing. And think about even if he got tackled short, you just flip the field by 10 yards just by doing that. So those plays are definitely going to, you know, kind of accumulate and add up over the season. You've seen them add up in the Tampa Bay game. Like the offense was almost non-functional. A little bit of that was Jaden's fault, but like it's on schedule, it's on time, it's on rhythm because of his ability to do that. So I just think like that's something that I think is excellent, and it's where it raises the floor of this offense tremendously. And we've talked about that a lot on this show already. So I love that play. I think it's a great play. I think there's other plays throughout the game that mimic that same thing. And obviously it's a double-edged sword because there's times where he thinks he can make a play, ends up taking a sack. Like you're always going to be walking that line with him, as you are with most mobile quarterbacks, just because they always think they can make a play. But I think that is a great example of elevating the floor of the offense.
No doubt. So then after that, he misses a play, obviously. He comes back in, and they run on the offensive left, double slant. He hits Terry, first down. Then he misses Terry on a 2nd and 13 against man. His feet are a mess.
Yeah.
He winds up scrambling on a 1st and 15 later in the drive when the tight end screen gets blown up. But they start to get to some of the like drop back game, rhythmic, like let's get him going. That started the next drive. It looks like it's actually a true RPO. I wrote down RPO look because I just never know whether it's actually play action or because they do a really good job of executing. But it's the one where he drills Terry down the field, and then Allegretti for some reason is 7 yards downfield. Like
it's an RPO. You know, like that's. I was gonna say, like, if for those of you watching at home, if you want a keen trick to tell, the offensive line will tell you 9 out of 10 times they'll tell you because they're blocking a run. So does it look like a pass? Does it look like a keeper? And that's where the RPO stuff gets a little bit interesting, right? And usually you have a call in the RPO cadence that says, hey guys, like you can get downfield, but let's be a little bit slow. And Allegretti like is running it like he's running outside zone, like he's sprinting. So it's like a pretty easy call because he's blocking the linebacker before the ball is even thrown, and he's like 4.5 yards down the field. So, but yeah, RPO, offensive line, I'll tell you. You
get some RPO downfield. They ran, I think it was a Hank concept. They get the curl to Terry. And then he, on 3rd and 8 on that opening sequence, he winds up rolling out and hitting Ertz on the play. But like that sequence of plays, starting with the quick game on the first play that he gets back in, that's when I think like Cliff started to unlock him and get him in a rhythm a little bit. And there are incompletions. He's got some messy footwork in some of those plays, but it felt like what you were talking about, Logan, at least to me, that he started to kind of feel the rhythm of the game. Might have taken a couple plays, but then we see his production from there, some more of those intermediate throws, some playmaking on the run, and his performance kind of takes off in conjunction with some more opportunities to be a drop back passer or to at least push the ball down the field.
Yeah, and I think, like you said, like that, to me, I mean, obviously, like the slant's nice, the Terry, the stick's nice, the Terry off the stick spacing concept. You mentioned the quick game, but to me, it's the throw to Zach where he really kind of gets in a little bit of rhythm. He gets a little pressure. They're bringing what appears to be a 6-man pro. They got 2 guys underneath and 3 guys deep, and he buys a little bit of time away from the unblocked rusher, really layers the throw nicely to Zach. The next play, they run that kind of fake screen takeoff
Yep.
to Zach, and that ball was just really well thrown and really well positioned. And then obviously there's that incompletion to Diami in the 3rd and 8 in the red zone where, you know, Brandon Coleman, who was up and down this game, gives up a pressure to Kayvon Thibodeau. There's a guy right in his face. He layers that ball right over top, and it's a little bit long, but he puts it kind of right where it needs to be. And again, you know, I'm not saying Diami needs to do this, but it'd be cool if he could have caught that and just been a little bit more aware of where he was on the field. But I think those 3 throws just showed like an accuracy and anticipation that we've seen him have in practice. But like you said, it kind of gets him going in the rhythm of the game, which is nice to see because then he ends up making some big throws later also.
One question I did have on Jaden with the footwork, because it felt like it was super messy at times, but I'm also cognizant of something that you've said, and it's ringing in my head, which is you're not 100% on some of the timing of Cliff's offense in terms of the dropbacks and the footwork, and you're obviously super familiar with it in the West Coast stuff, and that's what I've watched most of my career covering the league. So, like, obviously there's that what was it, the miss to Terry where Terry kind of dives outside. He gets both hands on it, but it's a really difficult catch.
Right.
Like, clearly the footwork on the actual throw portion, that was off because he's like lunging into that throw. But there's some other dropbacks that feel a little rushed at times. Is that him being sped up? Is that actually what this offense looks like? Like, what's your feel on that with whatever you know about this offense at this point?
I don't know about all of them, but on that one to Terry specifically, that's just a simple stick. That's like in every offense in the NFL. And I think he did a really good job. You read the stick, it's dead. You get to over the ball, it's dead. So I like it. But then there's a little bit of a gap in the line. And that's where, again, like, this is something he's got to figure out for himself. Like, when can I be patient, like, and feel the rush, and when can I run? And so he, to me, is like, I'm to Terry, and for whatever reason, I think the gap kind of catches his eye, and he's like, I can run. But he's like, oh no, Terry's open. So he's like going to run, and then kind of like is off of a weird base and tries to throw it. So to me, I thought that was a really good example of like, hey man, like, great balance, great footwork in the pocket. Like, just finish the throw. You know what I mean? Like, throw the ball. And that is something I can't imagine how challenging that is for Cliff to negotiate. It's because, like, what makes you really good and makes you really dangerous is your ability to run. But I want you to be dangerous as a thrower too, which we saw more this game, which I appreciate. But like, these are the times where it's like you still see, like, I was trying to think of a way to quantify it. It's like you see kind of like you see an increase in efficiency, right, from the offense from him as a passer, but there's still these decisions where it's like, oh, that decision on the RPO could have been a little bit cleaner. The decision on the zone read could have been cleaner. That decision to stay in the pocket and throw the football could have been cleaner. That decision to throw the football away. And so I think as he continues to improve, some of that offensive efficiency we talked about in the red zone specifically will also augment too. So that's something that I'm excited about because, again, he improved a lot from week 1 to week 2, but there's still some of those things where you're like, we can just sharpen this up a little bit, and it's going to get sharper the more NFL defense you see.
Right. It's also going to fluctuate week to week. You know, the simplicity of the Giants defense probably helps compared to the complexity of Tampa's. Lou Anarumo is pretty freaking good as a defensive coordinator in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
They do some fun stuff. So that we'll see how that goes. But, you know, then you got like Cleveland, like they're nasty. That's going to be really difficult to.
Yeah.
And what I like though is Cliff clearly understands that he has to insulate his rookie, not because his rookie's not really good, but it's because he's still a rookie. And I think that's the thing that I ultimately come out of this game with Jaden is going, man, there is so much to like. Yes, the floor of the offense is super high. When things break down, he can make stuff happen because he is a special athlete. Cliff understands, hey, I'm going to have to, you know, throw a lot of these screens because there is a leverage thing. But, hey, maybe eventually I need to let him go a little bit to get into a rhythm. And it's there's not going to ever be a point where they figure it out and it clicks and he's going to be perfect every game because that's not how the NFL works. But seeing progress week over week, I think you have to be happy through 2 weeks of Jaden Daniels and really hopeful because I think a lot of the stuff that within the vacuum of the game didn't go well are distinct growth opportunities that I think we're excited to watch him grow with.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing I keep coming back to. It's like, you know, every test he's taken, he's improved, right? So last week to this week, first week to training camp, they're all kind of progressing. And so that's the thing that's encouraging to me, is if he was kind of staying the same as week one and, you know, kind of, and again, it's only 2 games, so I'm going to pump my brakes on that too. But if you kind of look like Caleb Williams, where the mistakes aren't getting corrected, there's not kind of an improvement, I'd be a little bit nervous, quite honestly. So I think nervous is maybe the wrong word. I'd just be like, oh, we got to like kind of find a way to get him comfortable. And so I think, like you said, Cliff's done a good job of getting him comfortable. He seems to be improving week on week, which is important. Obviously, this week against Cincinnati is going to be its own ball of wax. So, you know, head on a swivel there. But I'm generally encouraged. And I think there's like been this kind of crazy overreaction to him, you know, like not being perfect all the time. And I think you hit the nail on the head there. Like, he's a rookie quarterback in a very complicated, and I think this is another thing that we haven't really talked about on this show, but it is 100% true. Like, offensive scoring's down, offensive touchdowns are down, offensive first downs are down. This is the year of the defense, and defenses are kind of starting to figure offenses out. So, like, I think if you look across the league and not just focus on the Commanders, you'll see that there's a pretty drastic difference between, you know, like defense from 5 years ago and now in terms of how productive and effective they're being.
Want more from Craig and Logan? Subscribe now on the free Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcasts. More Hoffman Show next on the Team 980 and the free Odyssey app.
It's the Hoffman Show, our final hour here on this Tuesday on the Team 980, always live as well on the free Odyssey app. Coming up at 6:30, is an improbable run to the playoffs really going to happen? We'll talk about it coming up at 6:30, but right now, 6 o'clock, we didn't get to hear anything from Dan Quinn yesterday, so we figured we'd catch you up today on everything DQ said in light of the Commanders' first win of the season with a pick six.
The 6 biggest Commanders storylines.
It is caught!
Delivered at 6 o'clock sharp. It's the pick six at 6.
We set out to find a leader, someone who could take this franchise to the next level, build an elite team that consistently competes for championships.
All right, there is one issue above all else when it comes to this team from Sunday, and that is where we start our pick 6.
Number 1.
Number 1 is the red zone. Dan Quinn was asked about it, as you would imagine, and this is what he had to say about his team, their performance in the most important area of the field. He did try to go offense and defense here. Obviously, both are relevant in terms of the result of the game. I think most people are more in tuned on, or intrigued about what happened on the offense, but here's DQ.
Yeah, on the let's start on the first one, the touchdown. We've really got to be better on the first one that defensively we allowed. The term, you've heard it, crack, replace. And so when one trap block happens, you got to be ready to step in and get there. And so not to be able to deliver on that one down the red zone, that was a bummer for sure. We misfit, I would say probably 2 or 3 that caused some of their stronger runs, but by and large, I was pleased. I felt, John, that the effort felt more like us. Not to say it was completely true to our identity yesterday, but it felt a lot more like us and moving in that way. So I was pleased with that. I felt it was more physical. There was better hitting. There was better tackling. To say we were there, hell no. But it was a lot better and trending in the right space.
I think defensively in the red zone, like the Giants had them well scouted. They were like, they struggle. Wow, Anthony. Struggle is an interesting word to struggle on. Let me tell you.
Struggle.
Struggle. They struggled against Tampa with bunches. Giants get down to the red zone. Bang, bang. Bunch. Touchdown, Malik Neighbors. Wide open. Bad communication. They struggle with trap and wham plays. The crack replace defensively. So they hit him with a wham or a trap down there, and they walk in on another touchdown. Mike Sanders still in a ton of space, still figuring out how to play the right leverages. Bang, bang, they get him. That's the 3 Giants touchdowns all in the red zone. But I think most people are probably more intrigued with what's going on the offensive side of the ball, because they did get, force a field goal. Obviously, they get a 4th down stop. Everything's a little weird down there because of the lack of Giants kicker. But on the offensive side, what are we doing on these penalties? That's step 1 of fixing the offense in the red zone.
Yeah, those are the ones, so I would call like the pre- and post-snap ones, like they'll fall under discipline, Nikki. And those are the ones that we have to get rid of, because there could be a check at the line of scrimmage and you jumped, like, hey, man, like we're going to get into the best play, have the discipline to stay in it. Like most things, more practice at it for sure, even if you have to check in and out of a play that you don't need to for that simple purpose of doing it right. More often I found the false starts are, I'm wanting to go too quickly. I'm just get the check, get to the call to go. I can live, you don't want them, but I can live with the combative ones. I can live with a holding or a DPI. I didn't like the one on Nick on the opening kickoff, but when you're trying to be physical, that part I can live with. The pre and the post-snap ones, that's a no bueno for me. So we'll really, kind of focus in on that. The false starts were the ones that set us back in this game from a penalty point of view.
And to Dan's point, some of those happened on plays where they're changing the play, and then guys, like, they forget the snap count or they can't hold their water. Like, there's a communication aspect to it, not just an anxiety to play football aspect to it, if you will. So how much of the tempo that they're trying to play with impacts those types of things?
Kind of to that point, what did you think of the pre-snap communication, especially when you guys went no huddle? And because I know a couple of the false starts were when you guys went no huddle. Was that an influencing factor there? And I guess what did you think of the progress in that area?
I felt like coaches and players did a good job communicating. That was one of the things, if you remember from last week, that I spent a lot of time on to say, I want that part in game to be better. You're correct that 2 of the false starts were, checking a play, going from one to another potentially, and that is part of what we do. So the more discipline, the more that we can practice it, the better we'll get at it. And so doing it in the game-like environments, with noise, without noise, all of those, we'll continue to do that, because there's a lot, that we want to work on, but that in specific, the pre-snap, like making sure we get that right, that's really important, and we're going to work our ass off to get that right.
The thing is, like, you want to go fast because you want to cause communication issues. Like, all the stuff that has happened to the Commanders in some of these problems is what you're actually trying to cause in the other team. The reason it should work is because you're the offense. You're dictating. There's no such thing as hurry up defense. There's, oh crap, they're hurrying up defense. And hopefully you're prepared and you know what you're doing, and then it becomes a non-issue, and you've actually just hopefully got good answers to a simplified offense that's going quick, and you can have them go out quickly and get off the field, and then hopefully your offense can put the other team in a blender, and their defense gets real tired, and that's a good way to play complementary football if you can. But on the offensive side, when you go hurry up, you're supposed to be able to avoid all that stuff because you're the one dictating the action. You're the one who knows what to do. And the Commanders have a lot of really good pieces to go hurry up. One, they have a mobile quarterback, so you can get out of bad plays and stay out of bad down and distances because he'll just scramble and keep you moving. Two, they have versatile pieces like running backs who can line up as receivers and tight ends that can line up as tight ends, wide receivers, or fullbacks. Like, you have versatile pieces that can go all over the place that you don't lose some of the formational flexibility and personnel flexibility that you get typically, or you lose typically in hurry up because you can keep the same guys on the field, and the second you sub, your hurry up is dead because the other team can take a sub and thus take a breath. So at the end of the day, like, they got to get it, make sure that they're on the same page, that they understand, hey, if we're in hurry up and we check this is the default snap count, or this, the snap count stays, or the snap count changes, or whatever it is, where you don't have guys jumping off sides. Because you want to quote the old John Wooden quote, you want to be quick without hurrying. You want to go fast but in control where it feels out of control for them. And unfortunately for the Commanders, it felt out of control on the offensive side of things, and that killed their chances of being productive in the red zone.
Number two
topic that Dan Quinn tackled is Terry McLaurin. He has been a factor, kinda, but certainly not to the level that we know he's capable of. And there was a really great question that Ben Standig asked relative to Malik Neighbors that also, if you read between the lines, can apply to Terry. Here's Standig's question in full and Dan Quinn's response to it.
And as somebody who obviously is steeped in the defensive side, they targeted Malik Neighbors 18 times yesterday, and we see some teams just, no matter what, they're throwing it to their guy. What is it that allows some teams to do that, where other teams, fans will always scream, or maybe reporters too, hey, get that guy the ball? What is it allowing them to do it when you know it's kind of going in that direction?
Yeah, I think if you're going to be intentional in that spot, then most teams, Ben, will move the player around to where, the first or second read could go. I was certainly impressed by Neighbors. When you see him in person, you feel his size, you feel his strength, you feel his speed that you can go. And so I think he's going to be an excellent player, or is an excellent player. But I was most impressed just by the size and speed of him. So anybody that can play inside, outside, that takes a lot of work to do. Oftentimes you'll see route combinations where they're going to throw, this is where the read is, man or zone, and where it can go. And then other teams will say, we're going to put that player into that spot. And it takes a certain skill set to be able to do that, and he certainly is one that can.
This is the thing I've always wondered with Terry, is like, when we say he's not Justin Jefferson, he's not Malik Neighbors, he's not, these top Devontae Adams. Like, what is it about him that teams just don't, multiple coordinators now have just not been comfortable moving him around like that? Because he does line up in the slot sometimes, and he has one from in there, but he's not as quick as guys like Jefferson or Chase, or certainly not as tall and as lengthy and as rangy as some of those guys. He's a different type of receiver, almost like a power player, although he does obviously have terrific top-end speed. And so I think the fact that he is seen as much more of an outside guy prevents Terry from getting those 15, 18 target type games that guys like Jefferson and Neighbors and Chase and on down the list are getting on a regular basis. With that said, I do think you need to find ways to get Terry the football. He's too talented to have this little production. They did a better job on Sunday. Obviously they got him going early. It was a loss of 2, but you get him involved on the first play of the game. Go back to that. Go back to the screens. Get the pop passes. Like, let him get the ball in his hands and run and be physical. And in that way, there is a tone setting. They're very different players, but I think of Deebo Samuel with San Francisco. When Deebo gets involved early, there's a tone set for the game for that offense. And Terry's again, I'm not saying you need to line Terry up in the backfield or hit him in the same way that Kyle dials things up for Deebo, who's I don't want to say a unique one of one, but one of like 5 guys in the league that can do what he does. Terry's not that, but there's a same physicality, there's a same intensity, there's a same attitude that is brought to the game when he gets the ball early, and I would love to see them find ways to get him more involved. And then obviously the Giants did a really good job of preventing deep shots. There's in the game, there's 0 passes of 20-plus air yards. That's not going to happen every week, and the Commanders need to make sure that doesn't happen every week. You need to get Terry 2 to 3 shots a game down the field because he can be lethal in that area. All right, continuing on.
Number 3.
With Dan Quinn's best of what you need to know, top headlines of the day, top questions to be answered from the weekend. Jaden Daniels, we just mentioned it, 0 downfield throws in this game, 0 20-plus yards. Did have some really nice ones in the 10 to 19 range, including 7 of his 9 attempts in the second half. So they did start to open it up a little bit more. But why, the question to Dan Quinn was, why so many horizontal quick passes early in the game?
I think as you're going through it, Sam, like we're still learning too. And, Jaden's just going into his second game. We had some ones down the field that we would have liked to have seen him take. Some of the ones even on the scrambles to remain a passer as you're coming closer towards the line of scrimmage to throw it down the field. You're probably referring to some of the RPOs that would have worked in there. One of the things I did like about, the way that we did able to control the possession of the ball. I think there was probably 35 runs and 23 completions. And if you're 55, 56, I think we ended up being like 58, somewhere in that neighborhood, Sam. What then happens is time of possession, now can become a factor, more plays. And so although we missed the mark in the red zone, I was pleased to see us, taking care of the ball and having long, extended drives. So we didn't punt. We kicked a hell of a lot, which, trust me, after what this team's been through, like I'm not bitching about making field goals, okay? But I will say that the completion, the poise of Jaden and putting the ball at the right spot, that's a really big deal. And I think the more we play, like we are still a new team together, the more reps, the more game experience that we get, these are really valuable times for us. And so the games are so important, not just because of the win-loss, but how we want to play. So I just kind of anticipate us continuing this trajectory upwards.
One of the most astute things that I thought Logan said in our tape breakdown today when we tape Take Command, which is available now wherever you get your podcasts, is he thinks Cliff is still finding the right amount of drop back versus these RPOs, these screens, etc. And I talked yesterday during the show about how I think Cliff is really managing the drop back game for Jaden well, because he is struggling more in it than he is with the RPOs. And RPO, I'm going to call it the RPO family of plays, because some of these are not RPO, set hut, put the ball in the back's belly, see what happens to the linebacker, pull it out, throw behind him, or throw the bubble based off where they go in a live action read, if you will, post snap. Some of these are get to the line of scrimmage, survey. Okay, we have numbers to run the football, set hut, bang, hand the ball off. Some of them are get to the line of scrimmage, or on the flip side of that is get to the line of scrimmage, survey, run numbers are bad. We're going to throw the bubble out here, set hut, fake the handoff, throw the bubble. That's where the numbers are. And so they're predetermined, but if they're predetermined, the defense kind of knows that too. And so the ceiling of those becomes a little bit lower, because if I'm the read player, if I'm the linebacker or the safety that's being the determining factor here, I can go one way and on the snap fly the other, be anticipating, okay, yep, there it goes, that's that RPO, let me get out there. And so there's a little bit diminishing returns versus doing it post snap versus different ways that you attack defenses. But in theory, you should have a good look or a chance in a good look. You're not running into bad looks, you're not throwing bubbles into bad looks, but then guys need to hit blocks, they're very execution heavy, yada, yada, yada. But they're safe throws, and they are going to prevent turnovers. And in theory, you got a quarterback who executes them really well, because he's done those box counts before. He's executed that stuff at a high level. He makes good decisions there of when to hand it, when to throw the bubble, when to check out of it completely. Like, he can handle a lot of that stuff. The problem was when you get into, like, okay, it's 3rd and long, now we need you to drop back, read a full field, and make a throw. You haven't done it the entire drive. And that's a hard situation on a 3rd down against a complex NFL defense with possibly a blitz coming to have your first full field reads. And as the game went, and especially after Jaden came back from the one play that he missed, they started to sprinkle in more drop back, and I think they found the right rhythm. So going all the way back to the beginning of Dan's answer there, when he says we're still learning, I think that's one of the things they're learning is, like, how much do we have to get Jaden some quick game and some real throwing the ball down the field stuff early to get him in a rhythm, and then make sure that we're insulating him and protecting him with some of these predetermined throws in the RPO family, if you will. All right, to the defense and the special teams.
Number 4.
Players that stood out for Dan Quinn against the Giants. A couple of vets that he wanted to isolate, and one more, by the way, on the offensive side.
I thought I'll give you two things. One is the first one, I would say, Zach Ertz. I thought he just made some impactful plays in this game. He's thoughtful. He knows how to get open. He can find the spots in the zones. He made some big plays for us. And then the other spot is on defense. And I thought Wagner and Luvu looked like a pair of linebackers that were square. They tackled. They blitzed. They just felt like they were in connection and concert together, Candy. And so those two, I really felt Frankie's physicality. There was a big hit early on one of the plays to Neighbors on the very first drive that he had a long catch and run, and you just saw Frankie hauling ass and going to get into the tackle. But he brings a lot of energy, not just to this team, but to the entire building. I love that, what he does. And then Bobby, I just felt him square and tackling, and that was what we need from him, and he absolutely delivered. So those would be the three that I would point out to in the game.
Were all those guys perfect? No, but they did the thing that you'd expect them to do. And I'd add Austin Eckler in there too. Just like the vets on this team, the guys they signed to fill roles, they are giving you exactly what you'd expect. Not unbelievable play, although Eckler, I mean, if there's not the penalty on the kickoff and he runs one back for a touchdown to go with the 70, 80 yards from scrimmage that he has, like that's a damn good day for Austin Eckler. Ertz making the big catches down the field, just consistently knowing how to get open, know how to drop flags and penalties as well. His yardage total in the box score doesn't actually reflect his impact on the game. And then Wagner, better in week 2 than he was in week 1, continuing to learn some of the coverage stuff in this version of this defense, different than the one he played in Seattle. And obviously he's a little more advanced in age, so he's got to figure out how to play within his current capabilities, but all in all, playing really well. And yeah, the physicality that Luvu plays with jumps off the tape. And unfortunately, like my 2 favorite defensive plays from the game are that one where it's a big run, but the physicality to end it ends it violently. And then BSJ, like it's another big run, but the punch out he has, the relentless pursuit, and the hey, I know this has been bad up to this point, but let's turn this around and go make a play. That's big time stuff and who this team very much wants to be.
Number 5.
Obviously, you can't go through the biggest stories of the day from the weekend and tie up all the loose ends without talking about Austin Seibert. He made 7 field goals. Must be a nice feeling for his head coach.
Yeah, absolutely, Ken. And going into it, I thought first to recognize Adam and Lance and the personnel department to say that they've been digging and finding and looking and just not going to back off in terms of the competing of what it would take to find it. And so Austin was somebody that we had spoke about a while back, even all the way back when we were at New York and New Jersey practicing against them and playing the Jets. So he was somebody that had just been on our radar, knowing that they had a good kicker in Greg Zuerlein. So if he was somebody that was going to be available, then he was somebody that we were going to consider. What does it mean to deliver for the team? A lot, because we've been up and down in this spot of our special teams. I love the energy and the toughness that our special teams bring. So this is kind of the last piece, to stir the drink a little bit, to make sure. I love the kickoff side. I was bummed that Austin didn't get the touchdown, but we're going to be a factor on special teams, the way we run, the way we hit. And so this was a really important piece to know that he can be counted on in those moments. So yeah, it's a really big deal.
And last but not least, one more loose end to tie up. A lot of questions after the game. Hey, why did Jamin Davis not play? Dan Quinn was asked yesterday, and, well, that's
number 6.
We actually put up 5 defensive tackles. We knew we were going to have like a pitch count, so to speak, on Johnny Newton. And so we felt with him 12 to 15 reps for his first game, we needed an extra big guy in the rotation for that game. So it was more by design. If Johnny was going to be up, then we were going to add an extra practice squad player up to have 5 defensive tackles as opposed to 5 DNs based on the limited playing time for Johnny. So that was by design.
And then the unspoken part of that is the guy that's last on the depth chart, the 5th defensive end, is Jamin Davis. And I realize that for a lot of us that have been around pre-Dan Quinn, it's like, whoa, that's a first-round pick. What do you mean he's last on the depth chart? But that's the reality of where we are in the final year of his rookie deal as they continue with this experiment. And maybe later in the year, he's past Javonte Jean-Baptiste. But for what Jean-Baptiste brings right now and what Jean-Baptiste brings on special teams, they clearly thought that he was the more valuable player. And so Jamin Davis as the last guy in the defensive end rotation behind, obviously, your 2 starters, behind Dorrance Armstrong and Cleveland Ferrell, behind Dexter or Dante Fowler, and behind Javonte Jean-Baptiste, he's the odd man out. And I'm curious to see if that, with Newton moving forward, do they want to keep that flexibility? If F.A. Obata ever gets back into the rotation, like what does that do to Jamin? Because he's a guy that can play inside, outside, gives them a little more versatility, but he's on PUP, and we'll see if he ever gets off of it this year. But it's definitely doesn't mean the Jamin Davis experiment is over. It's just the reality that every single week they got to pick guys to be inactive based off what they need in that given week. And Jamison Crowder was a guy who caught a couple balls week 1 and was their number 1 punt returner. He was inactive week 2 because Noah Brown was up. What happens this week? Do they like what they saw enough from Olamide Zaccheaus to keep Crowder down? Seems like Noah Brown's certainly going to be up. And so is Crowder just going to be inactive every week? Like, we'll see. I'd imagine so. But I went into Sunday not knowing if it would be Luke McCaffrey, Zaccheaus, someone else returning punts. Sainer still? Like, who knows? And that's the thing is we're all still learning what this coaching staff values. They've done a good job of playing a lot of stuff close to the vest. But at the end of the day, when the lineup card goes out and the snap counts are distributed and the games are played, we learn more about them. And they don't care that Jamin Davis was a former first-round pick. They look at where he is right now, that he's the last guy, and it's not personal. And I don't think Jamin takes it personally. If he wants to get more snaps, he's going to have to play better in practice and continue to show growth that he has. And I think he's doing what they asked. So we'll see if Jamin can get back out there. He did make some plays in week 1. I'm sure there's some other stuff that wasn't quite as good because it's a new position for him. And that's what happens to players who are learning new positions in the league. And so going to be interesting to watch. Going to be something to track for sure. But that is that loose end tied up from Sunday. That's our pick 6, tying up all the loose ends from the weekend, courtesy of Dan Quinn's press conference yesterday. And when we get back here on the Hoffman Show, we shift gears to the hardwood and a team that has no business making the playoffs that might just make the playoffs. We'll fill you in next on the Team 980. Hoffman Show, Team 980, always live as well on that free Odyssey app. 25 minutes from tip-off of the Mystics and Liberty at ESA. And Anthony, pretend I didn't just say that, and the Mystics weren't top of mind. What if I told you there was a team once upon a time in a magical, mythical land called the District of Columbia that started the season 0-12, and yet, with 2 games to go, currently controls their own playoff destiny and is currently in the 8th seed for the final playoff spot in the WNBA.
I thought you would have been talking about the Nationals.
Well, if it was the WNBA, and that'd be weird if the Nationals made the playoffs. But I get your point. Of a team that, if I told you there's a team that's going to make the playoffs that are starting 0-12, the Nationals would make a lot more sense. They started 0-12 there's 150 games to go.
Yep.
Plenty of time. In a 40-game season, starting 0-12 should eliminate you. And I will say this. I will just... The WNBA is currently too small, and it's expanding, and that's good. It's too small because the talent is too good. There's players that are WNBA quality that aren't on rosters. There's like the kind of WNBA side of that, but there's also just the reality that if you're going to have a 12-team league, you can't have 8 teams in the playoffs. That's stupid. The bar is too low to make the playoffs. That's my take. Hot take alert. It's really not that hot of a take.
All right, so I'll ask you this question then.
Yeah.
If there's only, I guess, 6 or 4 teams, doesn't that make the playoffs that much shorter?
Well, you could do longer series, for one. But also, yes, it would, and that's exactly why it isn't shorter. If you can get more markets and more teams and more games, that's more revenue for everyone, and the owners are the ones who make these decisions. And so if you're telling an owner, hey, you're going to get at least one if you finish in the top 3/4 of the league, you're going to get at least one game of playoff revenue. That's a lot of money.
Mm-hmm.
And especially in a league that the finances have not been great until recently. I get why they do it. It helps their own financial viability. It's not greedy. It's good business in that way. It is incredibly stupid from a competitive standpoint. So both two things can be true at once.
I feel you on that one.
With that said, the Mystics are in control of their own playoff destiny, despite the fact that I think if you injected truth serum into the Tebows, they would tell you this is not what they want. There's a very, very good trio of players in the upcoming WNBA draft. The Mystics will have at least 1, if not 2, lottery picks. They are going to need an absolute miracle from the Chicago Sky, who are 1,000% free-falling without Angel Reese. They are in bad, bad way. The Mystics absolutely dismantled them last week. They face Atlanta tonight. They need to beat Atlanta and then win their final game of the season, which I believe is against Connecticut. And the Mystics would need to lose both games for the optimal outcome for the Mystics in the long term, which is both they and Atlanta miss the playoffs, and they have the 3rd and 4th picks, or 3rd and 4th best lottery odds in the 4-team WNBA lottery. Unfortunately, one of them is probably going to make it, and thus you are not guaranteeing yourself one of those top 3 players, including the top one in the upcoming draft, presuming she stays healthy this year, which is Paige Beckers. But the Mystics are trying, and the reason I think that they are, if you injected Mike, the general manager, and Eric, the coach, with truth serum, like, they have tightened their rotation. Or actually loosened their rotation. They're playing everybody. So you got the player and the last player on the bench playing minutes. You got the starters playing fewer minutes. There's only so far you can go before you get accused of, like, truly tanking. I think they have tried to stay in the area that I like to call organizational management, not tanking. And yet, credit to their players, without Shakira Austin, with Aaliyah Edwards missing yet another game with an ankle injury, with Brittany Sykes being in and out of the lineup, they just freaking win. And so it's like, in that way, it's great because they clearly have a good culture. They clearly have a competitive spirit and a competitive attitude. They've shown a great ability to find players that will compete their faces off and find ways to win. It's just that once Slim went down earlier in the season, and Shakira has not been right all year, continuing to come back from the variety of injuries she suffered. Like, once your season's tanked, just complete the tank. And unfortunately for them, they've gotten hot here late, and they're on the verge of instead of being in the lottery and maybe even at the top of it, they're instead currently in good playoff position.
Yeah, I've been trying to wrap my head around it and figure it out as well, just because we know what's at stake. I think this is sort of kind of. I'm not going to equate Paige Beckers to
Caitlin.
To Caitlin, or like, a Victor Wembanyama, where you actually do, what's coming, you do everything in your power to ensure that you do tank and you have these grand odds to, land such a player. But
she is like Kevin Durant, though, and I realize that I know Greg Oden went ahead of Kevin Durant, but like she ain't Caitlin, but she's damn good. Like she's probably the second best guard to come out in the last. I don't know. I'm trying to think of other guards that have come out, because a lot of the best players that have come out, Asia, Stewie, like you've had bigs that you're like that player is going to be awesome. But like in terms of guards that have come out in the last 10 years, especially guards that are pro ready from day one, I don't know outside of Caitlin if there's one that's better than Paige.
Exactly, because Kelsey Plum, she struggled. Even if you go all the way back to
Kelsey, Jackie, like Arike maybe, but like it took Arike a while, and she's a very unique kind of player in terms of her scoring prowess. Yeah, Skylar. Paige is all due respect to Sky, like Paige is a better player than Skylar Diggins.
Yeah.
So, yeah, you're gonna have to finish. Like you're gonna have to win this lottery. And by the way it works is picks 1 through 4 are determined by a weighted lottery drawing of non-playoff teams. Lottery odds are weighted by cumulative record over the last 2 seasons. The first and second picks are awarded by ping pong ball drawings. The remaining lottery picks, 4 and 5, are by cumulative record over the last 2 seasons for picks 3 and 4. Now, the funny, wild thing here is that if you go by the cumulative record over the last 2 years, you think, either the Mystics pick or the Dream pick is there one that's better, because Chicago certainly seems like they're going to definitely miss the playoffs. And so it comes down to Atlanta. If Atlanta can split their final 2 games and Washington goes 0-2, because they have New York tonight, who's the number 1 seed, and the Fever, who are red hot, coming in on Thursday. By the way, I think we can officially say we're going to be doing the show from Capital One Arena on Thursday. So if you're going to that game to see Caitlin Clark and the Mystics do battle, come say hi. We'll be in the concourse. But if it's on this rolling 2-year bit, you would think, Anthony, that either the Mystics or Atlanta's record would be distinctly worse, and that's the team that you want to be in the lottery because you can get better odds. Nope. Over the last 2 seasons, going into the final 2 games of this regular season, the Mystics and the Dream have the exact same record.
Wow.
The exact same. Thanks to the Dream going 3-7 in their last 10, and the Mystics going 7-3 in their last 10. They are now, over the last 2 years, 32-46 each.
And those are the 2 worst.
Those are the 2 Mystics records that we care about.
Okay.
Chicago is 31-47.
Oh, come on.
And then Dallas is 31-48.
Good gracious.
So realistically, if Dallas could win out, Chicago can win out. The Mystics could wind up with, if Chicago wins out, they would beat Atlanta tonight. Mm-hmm. There's still a chance that the Mystics wind up with the 2nd and 3rd best odds in this thing, but realistically, they're probably going to wind up with just 1 lottery pick and the 4th best odds, which is only about a 10% chance of winning the number 1 overall pick.
Wow.
Dang.
Man. I will be in attendance tonight for Mystics Liberty. I was actually at the first game of the year where they played the Mystics. Where they played the Liberty, and they had, I want to say, an 8-point lead going into the 4th, and we ended up collapsing and losing by 2 or 4 or something like that. But I'm expecting another good game.
Yeah, no, I think it should be fun. Like, the Mystics are scrappy. They play really tough. That's the thing, is like they're actually a really fun team to watch. The problem is where they are in their team's arc in terms of building. Once you start 0-12, just finish the job.
Yeah.
And instead, they rebounded, and congrats to them. Again, like, salute to Slim and salute to Ariel Atkins and salute to Carly Samuelson, Emily Anxler, like some of the unsung heroes of this team. Obviously, Aaliyah Edwards has played a huge role in this and having a very, very solid rookie season. But, dang it. Dang it. All right, so that's tonight, and then Thursday, playoffs. No matter what happens tonight, playoffs ultimately will not be finalized until Thursday. We'll be there, Capital One Arena, Thursday night. Tonight's game at ESA. You can hear both those games here on the Team 980. When we get back, we wrap it up with our favorite thing from the show today and real things real people said into real microphones. It's the Hoffman Show. Final few minutes here on the Team 980 before we hand things over to Megan McPeak and Christy Winters-Scott for the Mystics and Liberty, courtesy of Monumental Sports Network. Anthony, what was your favorite part of the show today?
My favorite part was probably vibe check. We had some good calls on,
and also Gary.
We did have Gary. A nice spirited debate between you two. But following Gary, we had a couple of guys asking whether or not, or I guess what we should do with Deron Payne and John Allen, whether or not we should keep one, whether or not we would have been better off keeping one and keeping Montez. So it was a nice, back and forth between you and a couple of callers about Payne. And then Mitch Tishler also, talked about, what they're being asked to do and if they're effectively doing those things.
Yeah, I think the short answer to what should you do with John Allen and Deron Payne is have a freaking ounce of patience, which I realize is rich to ask Commanders fans who have been waiting for 30 years to have patience. I actually got this question on Twitter during the show, which I thought was an interesting framing, which is how long are we supposed to wait before we can hold the GM and coach accountable? Which I thought is it sounds like there's just an angry mob in the town square, and it's we want to hang someone. And I'm whoa, no one needs to die yet. But I understand where the question is coming from. And I think realistically, you need to see progress by year 2. If not at the end of year 2, if things are going the wrong way, you need to be hey, last chance, buddy. You better have some things figured. You better have some reasons why we haven't seen progress, and we need to understand or be on the same understanding that your leash is going to be kind of short on making sure things click in year 3. And then by year 3, I think you need to see results. By year 3, you need to be able to compete for a division. And that's a realistic expectation, especially if, you get your quarterback in year 1. By year 3, are you competing because that guy's been developed and you got that right? And then if, are there other circumstances potentially? Say you get the quarterback wrong, but a lot of other stuff is going right. Would I give you potentially a longer leash? Yeah, I might. But you'd see progress in other ways. And so the answer would be by progress year 2, results year 3. And while it feels it's you got your, in the last regime, the only reason the guy got year 4 is because the owner was under 1 billion investigations. And so he would have gotten fired after year 3. And he got year 4 because there was no one there to hire a new coach because the owner was in the process of being pushed out of the league. And before that, Jay Gruden won some early, and he ultimately got to year 5. But by year 5, things were clearly going the right way, and he got fired. And we all know what happened with the Shanahans before that and all the other coaches before that. And so, while it feels we just want to hold someone accountable, you have. You fired 1 million people. Perhaps patience could be the way. And not forever, but they're doing the right things. It's game 2, now week 3. There's nothing to hold anyone accountable for yet. Barely anything has happened. So I get the question. I understand where it's coming from, but I do think we're a little jumpy because you just want to see some winning, and that part, as a fan, I fully understand.
I mean, that and we're paying these guys so much money, though, so I think that's
talking about for Allen and Payne.
Yeah, I think that adds to it too. Just because we do have a ton of cap money, and we do have money invested in the Paynes, the Allens, the Terry McLaurins, so we want to see production if we're paying you all this money, kind of thing.
For sure, and I think they need to obviously play better, all 3 of them, but especially the 2 defensive guys. But your paycheck doesn't necessarily make you immune from having to learn stuff.
Yeah.
And in the new system. And, would Adam Peters have paid these guys this much? Probably with how they were playing a couple years ago. But, there's questions about all that stuff, too. So, it's week 3. Woosah. It's September. No one needs to die yet. It's September. October, though. Sharpen your dice.
Yeah.
Just kidding!
Real things.
We're not going to be sucked this year.
Real people.
5-11, not very good.
Said into real microphones.
You know, the culture is actually damn good.
Let's go with this one. Sunday Night Baseball, Mookie Betts was mic'd up and was asked about the time he met Usher.
He goes around and, he serenades the women. And I'm like, this is awesome. And then I told him, I was like, man, listen, Usher, I mess with you the long way, the longest of long ways. But if you come over here and try and serenade my wife, I'm throwing elbows at you, dog.
It's on.
I told him I'm diving on him immediately.
Did he say, don't worry, that's not going to happen?
Nah, he had the confidence to tell me, hey, I'm going back out on tour, so there's another chance. I'm like, hold on, wait, Usher, nah. But it is what it is. He got to do what he got to do.
I don't know what you say. He's Usher.
I don't know what to say either, but that's hilarious.
You just have the trust that your wife loves you.
Yes.
That's all you can do. Just be good and hope that she loves you, not Usher. Mystics basketball is next on the Team 980.